amazing how time flies. I can hardly believe that I'm sitting here about to deliver to you the November International Update for OM. Don't forget, we're well into our 50th anniversary as a movement. That began in July of this year and will end in July next year. I've just had the enormous privilege of reading the manuscript of the official OM history written by Ian Randall, and that will be available probably by May of next year. And I'm looking forward to seeing that in print and getting copies of that to you and to all our supporters around the world. Thank you very much for your prayers. Let me just update you with some of the things that are happening in the OM world at the end of October and as we look into November 2007. I wrote this update in Khartoum, the great capital city of Sudan. I had the privilege of being there to minister to our OM team retreat and our Operation Mercy staff retreat. Also had the privilege of preaching in the Anglican Cathedral there and in the International Church. It was wonderful to see some of the things that God is doing in that nation. A nation which in many ways is a broken nation. And yet God is building his church in that broken nation in quite extraordinary ways. One privilege was to hear of a street boy, a boy living on the streets 10 years ago, who was taken off the streets and cared for in one of our schools there, and today he's in his second year doing aeronautical engineering in the university there and faithfully following Christ. Two other teachers in the schools were actually taken off the streets a number of years ago, now teaching others who've been in a similar situation to themselves. Many of you are praying for the region of Darfur. So when I was in Sudan, I asked one of our leaders there just to update me on some of the things happening in that tragic part of the world at the present time. So let me just read what he said in his report. Darfur is home to over 4 million people who, apart from a shared religion, have been marginalized in all other aspects of life. We regularly send outreach teams to Darfur and have done so for the last 30 years, sowing the seed of the gospel through friendship, use of the Jesus film, and distribution of literature. There's never been a year in the last 30 when our teams have visited Darfur without arrest or imprisonment and sometimes deportation by force. For example, in 1988, our teams visited several times. An angry mob came out of the mosque to stone team members who'd set up a book table by the public theatre. The police intervened but expelled the team. Books were confiscated, Bibles burnt. In 1993, a small team returned to minister and to pray for the people. Many Bibles and other literature were distributed. 1998 saw more openness among the Fur people. Christians generally are gaining acceptance by local people. A few Christian teachers and doctors took work with the government in Darfur, a place of little interest to professionals because of its poor living conditions. A small group of believers, together with our team, started a small Bible study group. This became the first cell of the only evangelical group in Darfur. Today, there are 4 churches in the region, and the number of new believers has grown amidst the crisis. We're beginning to see God move amongst the indigenous people. So God is honouring prayer, possibly your prayers, for the people of Darfur. In 2006, we held a leaders' pastors training conference in Nyala. 75 leaders were trained, among which new believers from Darfur were present. One, a prominent secondary school teacher, told his father about his newly found faith. His father's response was, "My son, I'm illiterate, you're educated. If you've finally discovered that Christianity is the true religion, follow it. But don't forget, we're a family. Nothing should separate us. Maybe one day I will follow this Jesus." All were baptized early in 2006. Open-air gospel meetings were held at the same public theatre where our team in 98 in 88, was stoned by an angry crowd. This time, we received appreciation and applause from the crowd for preaching the gospel. More than 2,700 people attended the meetings on 3 nights, and 287 made a public commitment in those meetings. A new believer told us, "We thank Christians for loving the people of Darfur. While others killed and raped our women and burned down our villages, you came to our aid. That today is why I'm a Christian. My thanks is for this team that brought us the Word of God, which is more important than food. Please come again and teach us more about Christ." Please continue to pray for Darfur, not just for our teams there, but for the governments of the world and for the government of Sudan, that we might see an end to the carnage and the suffering in that tragic part of the world. So exciting to be in Sudan. So exciting to hear of other aspects of the work. For example, in a Bible exhibition in Khartoum, a friend from the majority community asked for a copy of the Injil, the Gospel. But he spoke whispering so that nobody could hear. When a Bible was brought to him, he again whispered, "I need 20 copies for my friends." It just seems there's a real hunger amongst some for the Word of God in that country. Well, that was Sudan, and in 2 days I will be in Myanmar, the country we used to know as Burma. Just this morning I got the news that a visa has been granted. I'm looking forward to going there, as I'm sure many of you have been praying for this country during its tragedies in recent days. I'm just going to encourage our team there, and I have some opportunities to bring encouragement to the church leadership. Our area coordinator for East Asia Pacific, Rodney Hui, will also be with me for that visit, and we'd appreciate your prayers. Just continuing in that part of the world, we thank God for the continued improvement in health in Jonathan Rodwell. He had that major operation, the removal of his esophagus, a few months ago, and he's really doing well, and praying that he's going to be with us for our international leaders meetings in March in Germany. Thanks for your prayers for Jonathan. Please continue to pray. Here in the United Kingdom, recently OM UK started a new charity called Freedom Network International, part of a growing family of ministries under the leadership of OM UK. This is set up not exclusively to support the cause of the Dalits in India, though that will be a major concentration, but it's to support issues of human rights and justice, which is very much becoming a prominent issue for us in missions around the world. Gary Sloan, our UK director, said this: "As a movement, we've grappled for many years with the issue of mercy ministries and how these needed to move from the fringe of our ministry to an integral part of our mission. That's also true of the growing concern for human rights and justice issues." Please pray for this new move here in the UK. Just before being in Sudan, we had our international executive meetings in the south of England, when our area directors from around the world gather together to look at some of the big issues facing us in our ministry around the world. Some of the issues facing us right now are quite technical issues, but they need your prayers just as much as some of these major mission issues which I've been sharing with you. For example, over the next 18 months to 2 years, we need to look at the whole corporate governance of OM. How do we govern a mission working in 112 countries with such a huge amount or such a huge percentage of that ministry in the global south? How do we give some international structure and governance to this? This includes our financial accountability around the world. We just need to improve in some of these areas, and I will be heading up a review group with my 2 associate international directors, Joseph D'Souza and Francois Vosloo will be heading up a review group looking at our accountability financially and our corporate governance worldwide. And we'd appreciate your prayers for what will be a long and complicated process. Let me also mention the Next Generation ministries in which we're involved in OM. Many of you prayerfully support the work of Teen Street. We had a fantastic, tremendous Teen Street in Europe this past summer. Now Teen Street moves to Malaysia in December. I'm glad to say the venue has been secured. The organising team is in place. We ask you just to pray now that those whom God intends to attend Teen Street Malaysia will come. Please pray for Dan and Susie Potter as they again will be leading the program in Malaysia in December. Just before the International Executive Committee meetings, I was in Uruguay in Latin America. Earlier this year, the city of Durazno was hit by the worst flooding in its history. More than 1/4 of the population were evacuated, about 11,000 out of the 40,000 people in that town. Hundreds of homes were badly damaged. In late September, OM recruited 550 people from over 10 nations to demonstrate God's love to this city, renovating, rebuilding at least 50 homes as part of our involvement there. We also provided medical aid, clothing, literature, and other supplies to the families. 85 families also received, over a period of time, basic food needs. Siegfried Claassen, who until the end of this year will be our field leader there, writes, "I was moved to see and experience the poverty and to hear of people accepting the Lord and others opening their homes for Bible studies." We'll be continuing to visit that city and to help families in the longer term. Please pray for our work all over Latin America. It's a growing work. Much of the work was instigated by ship visits to the ports of the nations of Latin America, but the work has developed. For example, in Chile, we run adventure programs, adventure teams. We're doing that in Spanish and in Portuguese. One prayer request is for workers to support this ministry and for workers in many of our offices throughout Latin America. Part of our goal for the next 5 years is to strengthen our infrastructure in Latin America so that we can see hundreds of missionaries from this huge Latin church moving out around the world. Let's go from Latin America right across the world to Papua New Guinea. As part of its 50th celebration, OM Papua New Guinea is organising a celebration at the end of November, and they've asked particularly for prayer for this. They're expecting 100 people to attend this special gathering in Port Moresby. It's one of the most international nations in the world. 850 indigenous languages spoken in this great country, and there's a growing missionary involvement from the church in PNG. So please pray for this very special meeting. Moving now to Europe, this autumn OM has launched a new outreach in Sweden, focusing on teenage immigrants to that country. It's in the city of Rasslat, or the suburb of Rasslat, a suburb of the city of Jönköping. Two girls who worked for a year to help run a youth centre and build friendship with local teens are running that ministry. The centre has been closed for some time owing to lack of personnel. It now is being reopened to provide a safe haven for young people. Caught between two cultures, young people from immigrant communities in Europe often feel isolated. Please pray that this new team will have a positive impact in the lives of teenagers. As I think I mentioned to you last time, we're in the process of asking the Lord to lead us to his choice for the next leader of our important ministry in Spain. With great gratitude to God for Pedro and Antonia Arbalat's leadership, we are seeking God for his choice for the next leader. We'd appreciate your prayers for that, and for David Greenley, who is leading the work there for 1 year as we seek to discover God's choice for that position. I mentioned last time the change of leadership in Denmark, where Andrew Berghammer has taken over as field leader. I asked the previous field leader, Bitten Schrijver, who's now Bitten Schrijver Ingerslev, to tell me where God is leading her as she moves on from that leadership position. This is what she wrote. I've started as lineup leader for the Logos Hope visit to Copenhagen, which takes place from March to April next year. And she'll concentrate on that until May 2008. What's next after that? I don't know. But Omer, that's her husband, and I would love to do something together. We want to work together. That's one thing we're sure of. So they would appreciate your prayers as they seek God's future for them. In Romania, preparations are underway for Bus for Life to visit at the end of November. This is a unique ministry developed by OM Finland to serve countries in Eastern Europe. This bus will spend up to 4 days in 5 different cities where local churches will work together with the team on the bus to share the gospel. Again, your prayers, please, for the preparations for that and for creative outreach ideas in those cities during the bus visit. A new European research centre has been established in the Redcliffe Bible College here in the UK. It's called Nova, and it began on the 1st of October. OM and 3 other groups are the main partners with the Redcliffe College in this development. The centre will look at trends throughout Europe, addressing issues relevant to the mission community. Again, if I can quote Gary Sloan, our UK director, he says, the European church is in decline. Europeans and their everyday concerns and challenges are changing. We need new ways of bridging the gap of relevance. We need extensive research on how to reconnect with Europeans and get that research into the hands of Christians working throughout the continent. Please pray for this new initiative. As you probably know, if you follow our ministry, Europe is one of our major targets in the next few years. We want to see the re-evangelization of this continent, along, of course, with the Christian church throughout the continent and many other Christian groups working here. Let me finally mention Slovakia, where we help local partners to equip a wood workshop with machines and tools. That's part of the ministry of Greater Europe. Located in one of the biggest Roma ghettos there in Slovakia. The workshop operates carpentry training courses. After graduating, 4 students recently found permanent jobs. Along with valuable skills, the course also teaches moral and Christian values and behavior to men from the Roma community. And the next course will start this month, the month of November. So we'd appreciate your prayers for that. So those are just some of the things happening in the OM world at the present time. You can get this international update by email. If you wish, just email me, peter.maiden@om.org, and we'll email this immediately to you. But we just want to thank you so much for your prayers for us. We sense the need for your prayers as much, if not more, today than ever. Thank you so much for your fellowship with us.